Afternoon. I am Sam, the movie mechanic, and today I have the privilege of sitting down with actor, writer, producer, best known for her portrayal as Pepper on American Horror Story. But certainly that is just the tip of the iceberg. Today I am talking to Naomi Grossman. Ms. Grossman, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Starting up, so as someone who came up in the business as a comedic actor, what do you find more challenging, nailing comedic timing or hitting the dark dramatic tones of a show like American Horror Story?
I mean, I do think that comedy, some people are just innately better at comedy than others. So I do believe that technically maybe comedy is harder because there's just either you got it or you don't. It's not necessarily harder for me because I think I do have it, but I think the two are not all that different, really. I mean, at the end of the day, you still need to be present and listening, and I mean, the actual actor work is the same no matter what genre you're in.
Yeah, so let's talk about the intersection of comedy and horror. Does it surprise you how big that overlap is?
No, not at all. I don't know if your viewers can see. I am dressed as comedically horror as I can be on this Friday the 13th. I can't help it. Every day is like a chance to, dress up and, be on stage, even if no one gets to see the stage, gets to see the show. No, I mean, I think they're very close, actually. I mean, when you think about it, like when you slip on a banana pill, that could, depending on how it ends, it could be horrible. It could be horror, right? If you die, or if you, get up and, stick your fingers in your friend's eyeballs, you know what I mean? Like, it depends on who's doing it, on how it's received, on how it, the aftermath. Like, it's either hilarious or horrible, depending. Yeah. I also think, there's so many characters, like these iconic horror icons, like Freddy Krueger, right? With the knives for hands. Like, we saw that before. It was in, Edward Scissorhands. And it was a comedy, right? So I just think when you look at, like, for example, SNL, which is my sort of touchstone show, you look at these like huge iconic characters like, the Coneheads or Tootsus the cat, and like they're over the top big, the same as Jason with his bloody hockey mask and machete. It's like these big over the top characters. I mean, before Horror Story, I was at the Groundlings, which is known as a kind of an SNL factory. It's a theater here in Los Angeles where a lot of big comedians come out of there. And, I could show you a whole room of wigs. Like, I've got just a whole closet of, costumes. And, I've played all the characters, I've worn all the wigs. I think one of the few hairstyles I hadn't exactly, sported was the, little Hare Krishna hair. So, at the end of the day, I really think, Pepper's job, I think it's, Pepper she could be on an SNL sketch, like, easy. It's just a matter of sort of dialing that dial, you know what I mean? Like, when it's a comedy, you can go all the way up. Like in the case of American Horror Story in particular, is a drama. And it's also, let's face it, you've got like dramatic greats like Jessica Lange, you're co-starring with. So you've got to be sensitive to that, and you need to look like you belong on the same show as they. So it's a matter of sort of dialing that down so that you belong in the world of the show.
So are you surprised at the amount of horror roles that have come your way in recent years?
Yes and no. I think, I mean, yes, in that if you'd asked me, before Horror Story, if that would be my path, I never would have suspected that per se. But at the same time, I mean, horror fans are very, very loyal. And so once they see something they like, they want more of it. And I mean, you can see this room is like covered with just like fan art from
Yeah.
the show. And so in that regard, no, I'm not surprised at all. They've really made me who I am today. So thank y'all.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I like the bat necklace you've got going on. My sister-in-law, she does Halloween all year round. Is that something that you participate in?
Yes and no. I'm not one for Halloween decorations personally. I'm an architect's daughter, so I've got kind of my living room is exactly as it is. It's to perfect right angles. It's a showroom. So no, I can't say that it's full of jack-o'-lanterns all year long, but yes, like I love Halloween. When Halloween rolls around, oh, you best believe I have a morning costume, an afternoon costume, and there are costume changes throughout the day. It is a very, very big deal. And that has always been the case. Well before American Horror Story, I was doing Halloween, right?
That's
But
great. So in addition to acting, you also have a lot of writing credits, and you've done a lot of your own work. You've written your own work. You have a series of shorts available on YouTube. Um, and then of course, your one-woman shows, Girl in Argentine Landscape, Carnival Knowledge. Let me ask you, what part of the writing process do you find most enjoyable? Is it when you get early in the process where the idea comes to you, or is it something later on down the line?
most enjoyable, I think when it's done. No.
Yeah.
I mean, I really write because I have to. I haven't always been lucky enough for others to write for me. So I felt like I really needed to kind of create my own opportunities. And if that meant writing them myself, then so be it. As it turns out, I've gotten the underhanded compliment, you're a better writer than actor, which is like, thanks. I think what they mean is I'm actually a really good writer. I choose to think of it that way. And actually, I know that about myself. Like, I'm very proud of the writing of my, now 3 solo shows. I have a third to add to your list, but it hasn't been produced yet. So we're waiting on that. But I wrote that all through COVID. And, I joke about like, the most enjoyable part, because honestly there wasn't a whole lot enjoyable about last year. Between the lockdown and
Yeah,
it's just sort of a drag. I don't have to tell you that.
Right.
We're not even out of it really. But I tend to write, I really like chum on my words, so I find myself, and I'm also kind of OCD. So, it's not just the living room that is on perfect right angles. Like I will literally recycle in my head, like, or the, like a million times. And I'm like, Naomi, move on. Like, who cares? But like, I care. And that's kind of what makes it poetry at the end of the day. I sort of fancy my style as being a really interesting sort of mesh between the kind of crude and poetical. Like I kind of I tend to tackle autobiographical, often sexual, taboo topics. And yeah, I have a very specific voice. And it was a hard year. But I knew that this was the time to do this thing, and I did it, and I'm really proud of it. I'm so thankful that I had something to really just like pour myself into, because oh my God, if I'd been like baking bread and doing puzzles all this time, I mean, I'd be as big of a house, and so it's good. I have my own way of coping.
That's so funny. So this new project, is there a particular line or moment that really stands out to you? Something that you're really proud of?
Well, it's called American Horror Story,
Or WHOR? Okay.
WHORE. Yes. I'm not proud of that per se, but uh, honestly, what I'm proud of, honestly, is that the show. I mean, there's the Carrie Fisher quote, take your broken heart and turn it into art. And I will say, like, I suffered, not so much as in the writing, although COVID was no fun. But it's primarily takes place in 2016, which was just personally a difficult year for me. But I'm so thankful and proud that I am an artist, and that I am able to, pick up the pieces and make something beautiful from them. I feel like that year would have been wasted on like a dentist or realtor. Thankfully I'm creative, and I put it to good use. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the foresight, because there were moments in that year that were so messed up. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I remember thinking while it was happening, thinking this is a show, and like taking screenshots so that I would like have this to document, in the show later. And sure enough, I have, and it's going to blow y'all's mind.
Are you talking about 2016 or 2020?
2016, some screenshots, which I wrote about in 2020, which hopefully will get off the ground and you'll be seeing in 2021, but you will be seeing. I will say that.
Yeah, I think I had this moment at the end of 2020, and I'd like to get your take on it too, but where I was like, what if we look back on 2020 as like the paradise? Like this was actually a great time. I spent a lot of time at home with my wife and kids. A lot of people got off of electronics, or they went out into nature rather than going into the city. What if we look back on 2020? You took on this project that you probably wouldn't have taken on otherwise. 2020 as paradise versus prison.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's all about perspective, and I think and for some people, I think it was. I think for the introverts out there, or the people on a farm far away, like without, I don't know. I mean, it just depends on who you are. Like, I know for me, as a extreme extrovert who lives alone, single, with family thousands of miles away, a news junkie, I was suffering,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like, what do they say? We're all on the same, we're all on the same roller coaster, just the different part of the ride. Like, I would agree with that. I was like at the helm at the start, and now, I've kind of, there's people who I think only just now are starting to freak out. I can't imagine. I wish.
Hey, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
It strikes you different at different times, I'm sure. So going back to high school, I understand you spent a lot of time abroad in Argentina. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So I also spent some time abroad, and found that there's a bit of a transition in the relationship between the traveler and the place being traveled. What was that transition like for you? Was it a sudden, like you fell in love with Argentina all at once, or did it take place over a long period of time?
I mean, I think it is like a real relationship in that I believe in love at first sight, but I also believe that love gets better the longer it lasts, you know. Yeah, I definitely fell in love at the start, but it only, the more I learned and the closer I got, you know, I never fell out of love. Um, yeah, it was just it was a great match. And that's what a lot of my solo show is about. You know, it's about kind of finding yourself far, far from home. Like, um, people ask me, or ask anyone for that matter, you know, where are you from? And I can tell you Denver, Colorado. And you'll probably be like, really? And I think that myself. I just, it's nothing against Denver, but I don't relate to it in the same way as, Córdoba, Argentina. I have a real, I don't know, it feels like home. And I think there's something to be said for that. I'm not saying I'm like the Rachel Dolezal of, you know what I mean? I'm not like, but at the same time, I think it's okay to feel like you're from somewhere that you're maybe not.
Yeah. How much of that experience do you unpack on a daily basis? Like, are you still pulling things out of that experience abroad that you use every day, or is it something like, it's a trophy case and every now and then you'll crack it open and pull something out when you need it?
I mean, I've been pulling stuff out of that case for a long time. So it's rare for me to find anything new, but I mean, that experience has, informed every aspect of my life. And that's why I know some people might listen and be like, okay, so you think you're from the, no. Like, it's affected the relationships I've had. I mean, like, every boyfriend I've ever had has been like Fernando, Gabriele, Julio, you know what I mean? Like, this is what I like. I've, from the odd jobs I've done, as a aspiring, unemployed, hungry actor. I waited tables at a, Latin night club. I taught Spanish at the Playboy Mansion. I mean, that has been like a skill that has honestly fed me. Like, it kept a roof over my head. My first solo show, which honestly kept me in the game. I had been trying at this, career for years. I wasn't being cast in traditional ways. So I just put a pen to paper and said, all right, I'll cast myself. And that's when I wrote the show. And it's all about that year. And that, while that show didn't necessarily, directly open doors in Hollywood, it kept me in the game. Like, I was, my fire for, my passion for this career or choice was invigorated. And I'm had it not been for that, I don't know, I might have thrown in the towel. Who knows? But it's like, I always say to people when they ask, any advice as an actor, I'm like, have a life. Like, I don't know, maybe quit acting for a year and move to Argentina, like, worked for me. Truly, like, having other things to talk about other than your acting career is like critical in Hollywood. I mean, nothing is more toxic to Hollywood types than, some actor, who only wants to talk about, her headshots or her demo reel. It's like, bleh. Who wants that? So, knowing about the world, having traveled, learning languages, just being a, like, generally, like, a citizen of the planet is paramount. So yeah, so that's why I say it's rare for me to find something I haven't unpacked about that experience. But it's I mean, it's a part of me.
Fantastic. So we have to rewind a little bit. You said you taught Spanish at the Playboy Mansion.
Yeah, well, I know
What happened
it
there?
doesn't seem like that. It's not a real typical place where you can't just go take lessons there. I taught at a school in Beverly Hills called the Beverly Hills Lingual Institute, and one of my students was Bridget Markart, who was one of Hugh Hefner's main girlfriends. I don't know if you remember this show, with The Girls Next Door.
Yep.
It was like a reality show. It followed the lives of the three main girls. Bridget was the smart one. She is very smart. I don't mean that as facetious, but she was the smart one. And so every now and then, she needed a little private tutoring. She'd have me over for Sunday fun day, and we were like the two like nerds in the corner, like reading Spanish books while the others frolicked in the grotto. And yeah,
That's so funny. Yeah, I spent 2 years in Mexico, so I also speak Spanish. My brother, he spent some time in Dominican Republic, and when we speak Spanish to each other, the first time I ever heard him speak Spanish, I was like, "You're doing it wrong. Your accent is not right. That's not correct." And then I remember going to Boston, and there's a lot of Dominicans in Boston, and as they're walking down the street, I'm hearing them talk in Spanish. I'm like, that sounds just like my brother. Oh, I had it pegged all wrong. He speaks perfect Dominican Spanish. Do you ever get annoyed with or kind of lost listening to other people speak Spanish other than Argentines?
No, but I know what you mean. My family similar. My parents were in the Peace Corps in the 60s. They were like the first Peace Corps volunteers, and they were in Colombia. And my dad actually, interestingly, lives in Argentina now, which is a whole other, layer to this onion. But he has a very good ear for languages, and he speaks like a Spanish newscaster. Like, he has the most crystalline Spanish. My mom, alternatively, is from Texas, so she sounds like George Bush. And then there's me. I have a very thick Argentine accent. I am very cool from 1997. Like, whenever I go back, all of my friends are like, "Oh my God, you are so cool!" Like 20 years ago. Like, no one sounds like that anymore. But like, yeah. Anyway, so yes, when the three of us would travel as a family, it was like, what? Like, how did you all get together? Now I've forgotten what your question was. Oh, if I can understand others. It's funny. I worked on a show called Destination Truth. It was on the Sci-Fi Network, and I was like the fixer, basically. I was an on-air translator, and I was sort of like making sure when the show went to a Spanish-speaking country, I made sure, we got to where we were going, and, things went smoothly. And they didn't always go smoothly, let me tell you. And I definitely had like more than one conversation with the, powers that be that were like, "Do you really speak this language? Like, because like, how are we this lost?" And I'm like, "Because like, we're in Paraguay. Like, what do I know?" Like, I get lost in my own neighborhood. Like, just because I speak the language doesn't mean I can't get lost. But yeah, there were many, many moments where I was like, "Oh, right, I have to like understand what they're saying," but it happens in English. I actually had a podcast right before this with a British guy, and he called me cheeky. I had to Google it later. I was like, "What does it mean?" So, happens all the time.
That's so funny. Yeah, I would love to redo this whole thing in Spanish some other time. We should do it all over from the top. But going back,
that'd be fun.
That would be amazing, right? We'd probably be like, "What is she saying? What is he saying?" Speaking each other's accents are so weird. But you were talking about sending out pictures of yourself, I think, a little bit earlier. And in other interviews, you've talked about the challenges of sending out postcards with your face on it. as kind of like the business of self-promotion, versus now you have your Instagram where there's thousands of people who are tuning in. Has the era of social media changed the process of self-promotion in any way for you?
Um, yeah, it's a daily thing now. You know what I mean? It's sort of like part of my routine. I wake up, I have coffee, I pee, I go to yoga, I try to post every day, whereas like the postcard thing, I mean, that was like a chore. It was like it took all week, and it took half your paycheck too. This is it's daily, it's free. If you add it all up, it probably is as time consuming, but it's definitely greener. And just definitely more effective. I mean, my goodness, I just joined TikTok like the very end of last year. I'm averaging like 36 million video views and whatever engagements in the last 60 days alone. I'm like,
wow,
how is that possible? Like how many 36 mil, like how many millions are even in, like, I don't know, like that's let's just say I'm very social. I have a lot of friends, but not 36 million. So I'm, the whole thing is like, yeah, I would send, 150 postcards out. And now I'm able to like reach so many more people for, no money. And immediately it's great.
So it's got to be a lot more satisfying to drop a post and then just have millions of instant views and sets of eyes on it. That's got to be great.
And it's not as soul sucking. Yeah. Let's be honest. Like that whole, I realized that like what I do, I'm a brand. You know what I mean? Like just like Wally has Walmart, Naomi Grossman has Naomi Grossman. And so I don't post pictures of my food. I don't, you don't know what my, how stupid I looked after 3 drinks last night. You know what I mean? Like I have to be really, I curate and, it's, but I think that, I don't know. There was something very like desperate and thirsty and needy about, sending your picture out. But it was part of it. Like, it's kind of what you had to do. Like we, you need that casting director to look at their mail and, oh yeah, that girl, so there was value to it, but it felt icky. So I'm glad to have, recycled those postcards a long time ago.
And let the people come to you instead of you having to push after them. That's so great.
Yeah.
So it's Friday the 13th. Would you prefer to sit down with some grindhouse horror or some classic SNL?
Oh, that's hard. Well, okay, it's Friday the 13th. So I'm going to watch the Grindhouse horror. But tomorrow, I'm going back to SNL. And I'll probably watch SNL for like the rest of the year until the next Friday the 13th, if I may be honest. But
fair enough. Yeah.
I'm very into like holidays and like, you happen to catch me on a Friday the 13th, but like, had it been St. Patrick's Day, had it been Valentine's, like, you'd have a whole nother Naomi in front of you. So yeah, I feel like I have to like do the holiday right. Yeah,
absolutely. Dive in. Well, we got time for a little bit more. Just wanted to know what kind of projects you got coming up besides the new one woman show. That sounds fascinating. What else you got coming up?
Honestly, that is taking up like 100,000,000% of me right now. Okay. Not only that, but the actor's job is, so many things we worked on something and then we're waiting. So, there's projects that I've done that I'd have to like go back to my IMDb to be like, oh yeah, I did that 2 years ago. We'll see if we ever see that a light of day of that. And then there's I just got cast in is it really a horror movie? I don't know. But it's one of those things where I could tell you about it, but you probably not, we haven't even shot it yet. God knows between, editing and everything else, like it will probably be years before you see it. So I'm kind of dodging this question if you haven't noticed, but I don't have anything like specifically that I can say, watch for me, Tuesday. I just appeared on the new American Horror Stories. So I'm still kind of enjoying that because, it's still on TV and that's fun. And of course they just got renewed for a second season today. So that's great news.
That is great news. They'll probably be calling you anytime now, right?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
So tell me, you're referring to shooting things a while ago, and then the process of producing and editing and all that stuff happens. What about the promotion schedule? I mean, what's that like for you after you finish a project?
It honestly makes the actor job easier. I mentioned, coffee, pee, yoga, this gives me, it's something to post, whereas otherwise I'm kind of like during COVID, I was kind of having to like, everything was a throwback Thursday or whatever, because you didn't want to see what I looked like that day. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to show you. Yeah. So, when you're finally able to announce and, talk about what you're doing, well, that just makes that part of your day that much easier.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for taking this time to be with us on this podcast. I am Sam, the movie mechanic. Check out Delete Productions on Instagram. Check us out on Twitter. Check us out on Twitch. Check us out on TikTok. Like you mentioned, yeah, we're trying to get that TikTok cheddar too. That's the sweet stuff. And look for Naomi Grossman on American Horror Stories. We'll be looking forward to American Horror Stories, your new show coming out, and follow Ms. Grossman on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, all the good stuff. She's there. I spent the last few days just really diving in, and there's some good stuff out there. Let me just say it. I'm not going to tell my wife what it is, but it's there. And thank you so much for taking the time. Any words for our listeners?
No, I would just say thank you so much for having me and for listening and for watching.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.